Hi, everyone. Happy snow day. Goodness, that was quite a snowstorm yesterday, huh? I hope all your families are safe and that you guys are loving the snow. I am. My dog is too. All right, let's get back to Phoebe the Spy. Quite an adventure story here that happens to be true. I hope you all watched my YouTube video yesterday, the Brain Pop video about George Washington. Look for another one today. Okay, this camera is a little messed up here. That's better. Okay. Look for another one today, and thank you for watching and commenting. That makes me feel so good that you guys are watching the videos and commenting. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to read. No, all right, here we go. Let's just start here. Now, hear me well, Phoebe. You are to do nothing by yourself, nothing that would put you in danger. You are only to listen and tell me what you hear. Trust no one. No one. He picked up his candlestick and began to polish it once more. When he spoke this time, his voice sounded sad. But Phoebe heard more than sadness. Her father was angry. You know, Phoebe, he said, 'tis a strange freedom we're fighting for alongside George Washington. Okay, the freedom they're fighting for is freedom from the king and his taxes without representation. But you're going to find out what that is in a minute. Phoebe nodded. She knew what her father meant. How could a man lead an army to win freedom if he himself owned slaves? Boys and girls, slavery was legal at this time. For General Washington did own slaves. It was said that he treated them well, but still they were slaves. And 'tis a stranger thing yet that you and I will save him, Samuel went on, and those like us will have no share in that freedom he's fighting for. But maybe, Phoebe said, when the patriots win their freedom, they'll let the slaves go free too. Maybe then everyone will be free. Samuel shook his head. I think not, daughter, he said, but maybe one day. Then he looked at Phoebe and smiled. Here now, get on with your polishing. It won't do to have tonight's dinner set off by dull candlesticks. And I think this picture I showed you was a slave ship. And we can talk about that more when we're together, okay? And so it was that a few days later, Phoebe packed 2 clean aprons and a bottle of her father's best cider into a bundle, said goodbye to her family, and set off to save George Washington's life. Mortier House was just a few blocks from the Queen's Head, but Phoebe felt as if she were going miles and miles away from home as she slowly made her way through the narrow, winding, crowded streets. A cold, damp wind blew in off the harbor. Everywhere, it seemed, men were pushing carts. They rattled over the cobblestones, loaded with guns and ammunition. Soldiers were everywhere, shouting orders. War was in the air. Okay, cobblestones are stones that lined just a street in a city. They didn't really have paved roads yet back then. So here are the carts, men pushing carts. There's no cars, there's no tanks, with all their guns and ammunition for war. All right, and there's little Phoebe walking through it all. Mortier House sat high on a hill with a carpet of grass around it that reached away to the large, beautiful trees beyond. There was a small storage house to one side with a hen house and yard where several chickens pecked, and scratched contentedly. Phoebe followed the long drive to the back of the house, wondering how soon she would meet someone whose name began with T, and what she would do when she did. Mortier House was quiet and calm, quite a change from the busy street, but here, too, war was in the air. A tall, thin woman opened the back door. She looked very surprised when Phoebe told her who she was. "Why, you're nothing but a child," she said. "How are you going to take care of this big place?" "I'm strong," Phoebe replied, standing as tall as she could, "and I work hard. I'll have no trouble." The woman looked at her doubtfully. "Well," she said, "leastways you talk right up. I'm Mary. I cook. This here's Pompey," she continued as a boy about 8 appeared from behind her. "He's my boy. He'll be a help to you, bringing in firewood and such like that." She led Phoebe through room after room of beautiful, shining furniture, upstairs and more stairs, across carpeted floors, all silent and waiting. Okay, here's Mary, and then Pompey is her son. Finally, on the top floor of the house, they stopped before a door that Mary opened into a tiny room. It contained a small window and a narrow cot. "This is yours," she said. "I'm in the kitchen, should you need me." Soon as the door closed, Phoebe sank down on the cot. Already she missed the Queen's Head and her father. If she were home now, she'd be helping him ready the tables for dinner. At the thought of her father, Phoebe rocked back and forth on the cot in despair, still clutching her bundle. How could she take care of this big, quiet, unfriendly house, with its gleaming floors and stiff furniture, and take care of George Washington, too? She could not do it. Her father had asked too much. Here she is. Now, she's older than you, boys and girls. She's 13, but still, she had to leave her father and go to a general's house and be a housekeeper there, all by herself, with just Mary and Pompey. That's a lot. That is a lot to ask of a kid. Okay, after a while, she stood up and walked toward the window. She could see out over much of the city. Over there was the fort. Here were the harbor and the tall spire of Trinity Church. And could it be? She looked harder. Yes, it was. There, among all the dark brown and black roofs of the other buildings, was the bright red-tiled roof of the Queen's Head. It stood out like a flag, almost like a signal, and suddenly Phoebe did not feel so hopeless. She wasn't so far from home after all. She would see her father every day, and she was to do nothing by herself. He had said so. His words came back to her. "I only want you to try, daughter." Phoebe sighed and began to untie her bundle. Okay. Here's a picture of what she sees when she looks out her window. The church, the harbor, the fort. All right. Now, this book is just one long book. It does not have chapters, so we'll just kind of stop after about 10 minutes. I've had my Chromebook crash if I go too long with videos, so I don't. Okay. Phoebe settled into her job. The work wasn't as hard as she thought it would be. Mrs. Washington had brought her own quilts and feather beds. It was Phoebe's job to air and turn these every morning, as well as to see to the buying of food and the serving of meals. She had to keep the silver cleaned and shining, and the furniture dusted and polished. She did not have any special jobs to do for General Washington, except to see that his meals were served on time. He was very particular about having dinner served promptly at 4 o'clock. And Phoebe sometimes had a hard time getting everything finished by then. George Washington never said very much. He was tall, with a quiet voice. He looked like the kind of man who could win a war. Mrs. Washington was to have a fresh egg each day, and Pompey, who was a lot of company to Phoebe even though he was only 8 years old, helped by visiting the hen house early every morning. When dinner was over, he and Phoebe often stood on the kitchen steps and fed the hens leftover scraps of bread from the table. Here's fancy Mrs. Washington's bed and her quilt. Okay, we'll make this our last page. Phoebe was a good housekeeper, but she did not forget why she was there. Day after day, she watched and waited and listened. General Washington came and went. The house was full of people all the time. Officers of the army, friends, members of the bodyguard. Phoebe slipped among them, silent as a shadow, as her father had taught her. Whenever she saw anyone talking softly, she stopped to poke the fire, fill their glasses, light new candles. But still, she saw nothing, heard nothing. There she is, being a good spy. She sees two men talking. She goes over and lights a candle. All right. We will stop there. Okay. It will get more and more. Oh, there it is. It'll get more and more exciting with every page. All right, boys and girls. Thank you for watching the video, and look for another one, okay? All right, guys. I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.